Um, I don't always share all of my thoughts when I'm talking to certain people because I'm not always trying to just look for conflict. It's not that I fear conflict. It's not. Sometimes I will completely engage in it, but sometimes I'm having a productive conversation with someone, and there's a benefit for both of us to just have that conversation. And I don't want to unnecessarily, hey Ravenheart, and I don't want to unnecessarily just start arguing with someone and shut down a conversation. But I'll oftentimes, because of me not supporting, Israel killing children, a lot of times have Muslims that get in the comment section and they'll try to convert me to Islam. And the thing about Islam, there's some Quran only Muslims, but most Muslims are not Quran only. The Quran says to follow the example of Muhammad, and then it doesn't really give the example of Muhammad. That's in the hadiths. In the very earliest hadiths I can find, they all say that Muhammad was having sex with a 9-year-old. And I'm not trying to I just cannot accept that. I cannot accept that a prophet would do something like that of God. So people will say, they'll try to say, well, you can only find God through Muhammad or through Islam. And I don't want to just be, I'm not, I don't believe that all Muslims are pedophiles. I don't believe that all Muslims even know about Muhammad doing this and everything. But it's just, I'm not trying to demonize the whole Arabic world or the Turkish world or the Persian world. These people are not all just evil people, and a lot of them can't even read. They don't even know what the Quran or the Hadith say. But I cannot find, like, all the most orthodox and accepted Hadiths from the earliest scholars of all time. They're in no conflict. They all pretty much tell the same story that Muhammad in his 50s was having sex with a child. And I do not know how they can reconcile this. I do not know how they can justify this. And then you'll have some lie. They'll say, well, she was 18 or whatever. But there's no hadith. Nothing says that. And so I've given Islam the benefit of the doubt. I've looked, and it's not just the enemies of Islam that are saying these things. It's the most prestigious scholars in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia and Iran. They're all saying it. So it's and I'm not wanting to really, I don't know. I'm not tricked by the media narrative to think that everybody in the world is my enemy. I know most humans on the earth, they just want simple things. They want to be in a relationship with someone they love. They want to have a family. They want to support their family. Most people want peace. Most people just want a good life. Most people are not trying to conquer the world or enslave everyone or everything. And most people of any religion, they fall into cognitive dissonance. They find things in their religion they don't like and they ignore them or try to explain it away. And they kind of just like going into a cafeteria or Subway. You're like, I want this on my sandwich. I don't want this on my sandwich. You're probably never going to find anyone that 100% follows the religion that they're a part of. But the religion is like a collective identity for the whole group. And there's a lot of overlap of what they agree to, and this binds them together. But I just, like all the Muslims that are trying to convert me to Islam, you're there unless you can prove to me, unless you can show to me that it's a lie, that Muhammad never had sex with a child, I'll never accept Islam. You're just wasting your time, because I'm never going to accept that a man that would have sex with a child is the supreme messenger from God. And I'll say that I believe in God, and they'll say, well, you don't believe in Allah, so you're not God. I mean, you don't believe in God because you don't believe in Allah. And, like people argue over the word itself. Some people say that Allah is just derived from Elohim, from El, and it's just pronounced different. And so it's just another word for God. And so if that's true, I don't have no problem with, the word Allah. But then there's other things like in Hebrew, Allah can mean to curse. It can mean the complete opposite. But you can't just use a whole different language to define a word in a completely different language. So I'm not saying that that's what it means in Arabic. It probably is a derivative from the same ancient Semitic word that, in one language it come to el and the other all and whatever. So I'm not really going to make a big argument about that. But if you're going to tell me that he did have sex, he did marry a 6-year-old and did have sex with her when she was 9, and then try to justify that, I'm sorry. I wasn't raised from the time I was a child to believe that Muhammad was perfect. I don't have this fear that if I leave Islam, they're going to kill me. I don't have this fear that if I question Islam, I'm going to burn in hell forever. So I don't have the necessary I don't have the necessary indoctrination and conditioning to try to do mental gymnastics to accept pedophilia. So I just think that pedophilia is just evil from the get-go. And so when you tell me this man's having sex with a 9-year-old and he's lusting after her when she's 6, I'm going to automatically say this is an evil man. And I'm not going to be able to follow it. I'm not going to be able to follow Muhammad. Anybody that would do that is a sick, twisted, evil man that deserves capital punishment. And I mean, I just have to, unless you can show me that this is all just propaganda and that it was never true in the beginning, but all like the hadiths that say that also say all the same things that regulate how Muslims pray, how they go to the mosque, you can't just get the religion of Islam from the Quran itself. People say you can, but you really can't. I've read the Quran. I don't have it all fresh in my memory, but I know several things that the Muslims do that's like the pillars of their faith are not even mentioned in the Quran. You have to get them from the hadiths. And the hadiths that everyone accepts, that same collection of hadiths say that Muhammad was a child molester. And you could say that. Now, they go two ways about it. Some just deny it, and the others say, yes, she was a child, but she supernaturally aged to 30 or 18 by the time she was 9. And I just think that's just nonsense. That's just somebody wanting to keep their faith of Islam and not wanting to believe that Muhammad is a child molester and trying to imagine that a child is an adult. And I mean, I just know too much about history. I know that in the last 2,000 years, we didn't go from sexually maturing at 9 to, in our 18. And, I know biological age is a little bit different, but you gotta put a number somewhere for the law and whatever. But so I'm saying this is going to be, if you're going to try to convert me to Islam, you're going to have to show me that Muhammad did not have sex with a 9-year-old. If you cannot do that, you're wasting your time. I'm never going to accept that it is okay to have sex with a 9-year-old. And I'm never going to accept that the perfect example to follow is a man that has sex with a 9-year-old. I will never accept that. And, and when I examine what is said about Jesus and what is said about Muhammad, and I look at the lives of Jesus and I look at the life of Muhammad, I can never believe that Muhammad was superior to Jesus. He did not live or conduct his life in a way more honorable than Jesus. And so I do realize, though, that the Jews speak way worse of Jesus than the Muslims. I do realize this. The Jews say that Jesus is burning in excrement and semen and urine in hell forever. The Muslims don't say that. The Muslims say that Jesus was a prophet, that he was a good man. They say that he didn't die. They say that he went to heaven and that he's coming back. So I don't fall into this whole thing where I believe Jews are good and Muslims are bad. I don't see the world that way. And I do think that Jesus, more than any one man ever, divided the world. It's sort of like, how you, I got to think a little while to try to put my thoughts or feelings into words about this. But Jesus is a very divisive figure, because if you accept that what Jesus said is true, then that means a lot of other stuff can't be true at the same time. And there's not really a way to reconcile, in my mind, so far as yet, that Jesus can be a prophet and that Muhammad can be a prophet at the same time. Because on a lot of issues, they're in direct contradiction with one another. Jesus said, whoever would harm the children, the least of these, deserves for a millstone. It would be better for a millstone to be tied around their neck and then thrown into the ocean. So if we follow Jesus, Jesus would say that Muhammad was wicked for hurting a child, hurting a 9-year-old, and that he would be better off to be drowned in the ocean. And then if we go by Muhammad, Muhammad is saying, this is the perfect example. Go marry a child. And so I'm just saying, like, I am with the Muslim world in agreement that what is going on in Palestine and what Israel is doing to Palestine is god awful horrible. You should not be using children for target practice. You should not be bombing children in Gaza. You should not be using children for sniper practice. So I agree with the Muslims that Israel is conducting themselves in a very wicked way. And I know there's a lot of Christians that blindly follow the synagogue of Satan. They blindly think that the nation calling themselves Israel is Israel. I'm not of that opinion. I believe that Jesus Christ converted a lot of Israelites. A lot of Israelites accepted Jesus as the Messiah, and the early church was by blood Israel. And they only married other Christians, and they went to the lost tribes of Israel first and then to the rest of the world. And so, and from what it says in Galatians and other places in the Bible, I believe that the Christian church is the true Israel of God and the continuation of Israel, and that the sect of the Pharisees is not Israel. The Pharisees converted a lot of Babylonians, a lot of Ashkenazi, Khazarians. They converted a lot of Edomites, and they continued a religion that was basically just a religion of opposing Jesus Christ. Rabbinic Judaism is antichrist by nature. And so because Rabbinic Judaism is antichrist by nature, I do not believe that it is the Israel of God. I think it's a grand deception that these antichrists have convinced people that they're the Israel of God that must be supported. And I believe that the Christians are the true Israel. And so I don't believe that I have to blindly support the synagogue of Satan in all of their endeavors. And I believe, like Jesus said, that you will know the prophets by their works. So Jesus is basically saying, if you want to know if someone's good or bad, a good or bad prophet, look at the fruit of the tree. Look at what the tree produces. And when I look at what rabbinical Judaism produces, it's terrible. It's wickedness. So I reject Judaism. But also, when I look at the life of Muhammad, I see that Muhammad's first wife was a Gnostic Christian. And I see that Muhammad, when he speaks of the religion of the Israelites, he's not really referring to the religion of Moses. He's really referring to Talmudic Judaism. So I think that the same wicked religion of the Jews and the heretical sects of Gnosticism is where Muhammad got his ideas of what the religion of the Israelites were, what the religion of the Christians were. Muhammad never really got the true gospel. He got the Gnostic version. And he never really knew the Torah. He got the Talmud. And so the Talmud allows child marriage. Not the Old Testament. The Old Testament doesn't. But the Talmud does. The Talmud says that it's okay to have sex with children. The Talmud says that. So I think that Islam is largely a byproduct of the fusion of Gnosticism with Judaism. And so, but correct me if I'm wrong and give me new information, but I go and I look at the Islamic scholars themselves, and they tell me that the most authoritative hadiths, that's where the Muslims get how to pray, where to pray, how to do a mosque, how to do all these things. The orthodox hadiths that they all accept also say that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old. So a lot of people are saying that I'm confused, that I'm like close to God, but I'm not all the way there yet because I haven't accepted Islam. And they say that I don't really believe in God because I haven't accepted Muhammad. And I would say, if I was to accept God, how could I accept Muhammad? He had sex with a child. So there's your obstacle there. If you want to convert me to Islam, you have to prove to me that Muhammad wasn't having sex with children. And if you're trying to tell me that that's okay, that I must accept that God allowed for Muhammad to have sex with a child, I'm just sorry, I'm not going to go there. And I would say so far as this: if God actually did condone having sex with children, and if the real God is okay with that, and the real God is going to burn me in hell for all of eternity if I don't accept that, I would rather burn in hell for all of eternity than accept that child sex is okay. I would rather be in rebellion. If that's really what God's about, I won't even follow him. Burn me in hell. So I'm just saying it's impossible to convert me to Islam if that is a prerequisite for converting to Islam. Because I'm just saying, I'd rather burn in hell for all of eternity than accept pedophilia. So I'm saying that in no kind of way can you convert me to Islam unless you were to show that all those are lies and Muhammad never had sex with a child. I cannot follow a guy that does that. At the same time, I do not support the genocide in Palestine. But at the same time that I see the dangers of Judaism, at the same time that I see that America is occupied by Ashkenazi Jews, at the same time, I don't want to be subjected to Islam either. And so while I am against what Israel is doing to Palestine, I'm also wary of Palestinians at the same time. At the same time, if Palestinian, like a lot of Muslims, when they come into Europe, at first they're nice, but they tend to not work and want to leech off welfare a lot because they feel like the non-believer is supposed to be their servant, just like the Jew feels the non-Jew is supposed to be their servant. So they don't feel guilty. Muslims don't feel guilty going into Europe, having a lot of kids, applying for welfare, and not working. There's a lot of them that do that. And then once they get a greater percentage of the population is Muslim, then they start with the stabbing and the child rape and all this other stuff. And I know Muslims will say, well, those aren't true Muslims. And, Jews will say, those aren't true Jews. Those aren't true Muslims. But the fact remains that when you get a society that believes that it was okay for Muhammad to have sex with a child, they won't outlaw child marriage in any of the Islamic states because it would make Muhammad look bad. And so it creates a problem. And so I do want to get rid of the Ashkenazi Jewish occupation of the United States. I do know about the evils of Judaism, but I also know that it would not be better to replace that with following Muhammad's example. And so, Jesus is, if you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll see that Jesus is not afraid of anything. Like if they're going to kill him and he knows he's going to be killed, he's going to keep saying the truth. And you see that Jesus just goes around healing people and they hate him out of jealousy. And they're always critical of Jesus. They're like, well, why do you shouldn't have healed him this way. You should have healed him that way. Or, and you read the story of Jesus and he's not doing anything wrong. He's just going around healing people. He's going around teaching the truth and he's just unjustly killed for it. And then he comes to life and he shows himself before hundreds of people and everything. And I do not know what 67 means. I see that a lot. Other people have said it. I looked up 67. I still don't understand it. Is it because I'm repeating myself a lot? It's because I'll see it go from 1 viewer to 0 viewer to 2 viewers to 0 viewers. And so I'll repeat myself because I don't know if it's the same person listening or a new person. So that's why I do that. But I don't know. Just in short, I would say I'm way more impressed by Jesus than Muhammad. I do not claim to know everything. I've not died. I've not seen what's on the other side. And I have met good Muslims that are honorable people, but often they will not be honest about the Aisha Muhammad question, or they're unaware of it, or they're unaware of the hadiths, or they try to imagine, or they reject pedophilia and they try to imagine that Aisha's, a 30-year-old at 9 years old or something. They try to rationalize it because they don't really want to embrace pedophilia. But some of them do. Some of them straight up say it's okay. Some of them marry their children to grown men and get excited about it because they think they followed the example of Muhammad. And I don't know. Because, see, I was on a different live stream. And I was having a conversation with Muslims. And I didn't raise the issue. But I did know that if they subscribe to me, they'll eventually see the other videos where I've said this. And they'll get upset about it. And I just, I don't know, because I didn't address it last time, I just felt the need to address it again. Because some people are saying, basically, I'm godless because I have not accepted Islam. And so I'm just going to go ahead and make another video and tell you very clearly why I haven't accepted Islam. There's verses in the Quran that I can be on board with. There's a lot of good things in the Quran. But I mean, let's be real. The Quran also talks about cutting the fingertips off of people, killing people, promotes world conquest. And then a lot of times these issues won't be addressed. It'll just be a deflection. They'll be like, well, what about what this other religion says? Or what about what you say over here? Well, even if I grant you that, what about what the Quran says here? What about what Muhammad did here? And I don't know. That's what I gotta say to that. And you're a Christian turning into this. I'm back, dude. Hey, dude. Hello. I'm doing rather okay. Hey, Reverend Hart. And I know that a lot of people they want to watch. There's a lot of people that watch my videos, but they don't really want to. They know when I get negative. They know when I get when I go on my rants. And so sometimes people I know sometimes I get negative. I mean, I think there is such thing as toxic positivity, like where you just don't address the problems. You just don't address the negative. You can't really just be blind to the negative forever and it not eventually there be some negative consequences. I don't want to always be talking about what I'm against. I also want to talk about what I'm for. I don't want to only talk about what I'm against. I don't want to only work on destroying the bad. You got to build the good. And I realize that a lot of times it's sort of a waste of time to get too negative. You should just be busy building the positive world instead of pointing out the negative. But there is some time where you just have to point out the negative. Hey, Abraham Lincoln. Sorry about what happened in that movie theater, dude. Sorry about that. But Abraham Lincoln, man, you had to know when you tried to make $1 that was off of the Rothschild Central Bank system, you had to know somebody was going to kill you. You had to know it, man, but I'm glad you tried. Shout out to John F. Kennedy. Thank you for trying. Shout out to Garfield. Thank you for trying. Y'all got killed, but thank you for trying. Thank you for trying to free the world. Sorry they killed you for it, Abraham. Sorry, Abraham Lincoln. I do got to say, suspending habeas corpus, putting senators in jail without trial, not letting them vote, that whole Sherman's March to Sea, man. I guess you had to win the war and unite the nation, but I still am kind of mad about it because, I'm from Georgia. Burning 100 miles of farmland and like sending your army to rape all of our people and everything, and then acting like you're the good guy. There's a lot that you did good, but do you think you kind of went a little overboard? But maybe you didn't. I don't know. Maybe you had to. War, it just escalates and it gets worse and worse and worse. And sometimes you just got to end the war. You gotta fight. You got to keep the pressure on. You got to end the war. So I kind of understand why you did it, Abraham Lincoln. But yeah, another win for white people. Ending slavery. It's yeah. Abraham Lincoln. That's a pretty cool screen name to just be like, I'm Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was kind of a complicated figure. In a lot of ways, he was very good. In a lot of ways, Abraham Lincoln didn't give a fuck about the Constitution. He's like, look, we got to unite the country. We got to win this war. We got to end slavery. And he cared more about the Union than the Constitution. But at the end of the day, could you imagine what would have happened if the Union wasn't preserved? We would have probably broken off into 2 countries, then broken off into 13 countries, then broken off into 50 countries. If every time somebody didn't like something, they just had a secession movement. We'd have been back like the warring Indian states. The Union is a good thing. It's good that you can go from the East Coast to the West Coast and not get scalped. It's good that you can do business from the East Coast to the West Coast without customs and duties and taxes every single border. So maybe Abraham Lincoln was right. Maybe the Union of the states was more important than the Constitution. There has been a trend of the federal government to just trample over the Constitution ever since, though, that, like I said before, there's trade-offs. There's no perfect solutions. You have to give up something to get something else. You have to say no to things to say yes to something. So I'm very conflicted about Abraham Lincoln, because on one, it's like he's a saint and a devil at the same time. And you can't really blame him. You can't really blame Abraham Lincoln. I mean, look at the position he's in. He can't afford to lose the war. I don't know. You could argue that he could have just let the South leave because all the new agriculture from the California was sufficient that the North didn't need the South anymore. But then for the South's sake, it actually was good that the South lost the war. Because if the South would have been cut off, it didn't have an industrial base. It didn't really have that much population. You could really argue that if the South would have won the war, it would have just been conquered by Mexico. And so, which I don't know. Mexico was kind of overextended. Most of the territory they claimed they had no control over it. It was really controlled by the Comanche, and so I don't really know if they would have. I don't know what would have happened. I don't know. I was going to go live and because I don't want to be hypocritical. It's not really being hypocritical. I don't want to pretend to be something I'm not. So I was being nice to Muslims. I was wanting to have a pleasant conversation. I wasn't wanting to just argue and derail the conversation at the time, because they were making positive points and they were saying really good things. But then at the same time, I want Muslims to understand why I'm so resistant to accepting Islam. I just cannot accept the whole marrying Aisha. I just cannot. And I don't think you should either. I really think you should question the motives of Muhammad when you see the kind of life he lives. And a lot of those things aren't taught. When you go to the mosque or the madrasa, the school, whatever. And the same thing can be said about the church. Like I told Brittany about in the Bible where these women eat their children. And she told someone about it and they accused me of being a liar. And there's like 4 or 5 different places in the Bible where there's in Deuteronomy where God tells the Israelites, if you abandon him, and there'll be all these curses that'll come upon you. And one of them will be you'll eat your own children. There's another prophecy about fathers eating their own children. And then there's I forget if it's Kings or Chronicles or where it's at. There's a siege, and these women make a deal where one day they're going to eat one child, and then later they'll eat the other child. But the woman eats the other woman's child and then hides her child, and they go and complain to the king about it. And instead of the king getting mad at them, the king gets mad at the prophet that predicted the famine. And then they defeat an enemy. A bunch of supply comes in, and they're all rushing to get the food and trample over the king. And then I think in Lamentations, it happens again. So I wasn't lying on the Bible, and the Bible doesn't condone eating children. The Bible doesn't say it's good to eat children. It just notes the fact of it happening during sieges. And Brittany had told Charlotte about this, and she accused me of being a liar. But you know why she thought I was lying is because when you go to church, they're not going to tell that story. They're not going to tell the story of David's son raping his own sister. And a lot of people don't read the Bible for themselves. And so when you go to church, a lot of it is to hype people up in a positive emotional state. And it's about entertaining people so they'll come to church, but not offending people so they don't go to church, because the preachers want fame. A lot of preachers want a lot of outside validation. They want a lot of people to say amen to anything they say. There are good preachers, but it's also a dream job for a narcissist, because you get all the attention and everybody amens and affirms what you're saying. And there's a lot of preachers that are going to not say a lot of what's in the Bible because they want the people to keep coming and give the money. And so I acknowledge it. So a lot of people never hear these stories that are in the Bible. And so, but anyway, I got kind of upset because she's like calling me a liar. Why would I make that up? So I screenshotted all the Bible verses and sent them to her. But I see this with Muslims a lot, that when you go to point out these things, instead of really addressing them, they say, well, what about what the Bible says over here? Or what about what the Hindus did? Or what about this over here? And they never really address these things in Islam. These, and when you're in any type of religion, no matter what it is, you fear going against the religion means you'll burn forever, and going for the religion means you'll live forever. And so it causes this situation to where people will see something that in their heart and in their conscience, they know it's wrong, but they feel the need to justify it because of the fear of eternal punishment and the promise of eternal reward. So it'll be clearly god awful. It'll be clearly a awful thing, and people will just sort of ignore it or gloss over it, me, I was afraid to question a lot of things, but I've always been curious, and I've always been a critical thinker, and I've also always had a heart. Sometimes in your heart, I don't know, there's just things that you just know are wrong. You just know that this will cause human suffering, that there's nothing to merit this. And I don't see any justification like for God to marry a 6-year-old off to Muhammad and Muhammad have sex with her at 9. There's no way. Like, God couldn't have found him an 18-year-old, or he was in his 50s. He couldn't have found him a 40-year-old woman or something. It's like, so I just can't get on board with that. I know I've said it 1,000 billion times. I'm a mama's son. I'm not going to keep repeating myself, even though I didn't mean to lie. I probably will keep repeating myself. But I'm going to just talk about it in other videos maybe after I get triggered by it again later. But that was all I was going to say. And then, but what is this 67 thing? I looked it up online. I think I got to know a bunch of other memes to understand the context of it. I guess I might make it my mission. Oh, and in another chat, somebody had asked me to watch the documentary on the Seven, and I did. And I remember seeing that on the news. I just didn't know that's what they were referring to, where on the shores of Libya, ISIS beheaded 7, or I don't know if it was 7, 21. Was it 21 Christians? But that's nothing new. As soon as Christianity got started, they killed Jesus, and they killed most, if all of his followers except John, which they did torture John a lot. A lot of times they tortured John, uh, put him in there with starving rats, dipped him in boiling oil. Like, they did a lot of things to torture John. And they put him on a prison mining colony to basically work him to death. But then the Edict of Toleration come out like right at the end there, and he was released from prison. And he was the youngest of the disciples. Pretty much every other disciple got murdered. And the Jews continued to kill Christians in Jerusalem and everywhere. And when they fled from persecution, the Jews chased them down, killing them. And the Jews killed like 200 million Christians before World War II with all their communist revolutions. And it just never stopped. You know, there's always been people killing Christians. That's nothing new. And it's never probably going to change. It's because, you know, if you're ever living a very virtuous life and you're shunning vices, it's going to make other people that are accepting the vices feel uncomfortable. And instead of them raising their moral standards, they would rather get rid of the light that shines onto their darkness. So it's like, if they want to be comfortable in evil, that's not easy to do while you look over there. Like, while the Pharisees are hypocritical and doing all their evil and trying to pretend like they're the good guys, and they look over there at Jesus and it exposes them. You know, all the good that Jesus did in a short time that they could have been doing and are not doing. And, you know, they know that they're lying to the people and enriching themselves and turning the temple into a marketplace. They get mad at Jesus when he clears the temple, but they know what he's saying is true. And they just hate him for being good, basically. And that can happen. It can happen that people can just hate you without it really being justifiable. It's just they want to feel comfortable living an evil life. And they want to say that there's no way to live a good life. And then when people are living a good life, it exposes them, and they lash out and they hate it. And so I don't know. I think I've run out of stuff to say, and if I just keep talking, I'll just not even say anything. So I think I'm going to get off the live. I'm going to go do some more research. The Muslims that asked me to read this story they've got about Jesus' mother shaking a palm tree and shaking down dates, I'm about to go look up that. I've had some other people ask me to look into certain hadiths. I've had some people ask me to look into just different stuff. I write it down. I got a list of things to go research, and I'm going to go research. And I'll also, I got to go water my fruit trees. Brittany gets off of work at 4. What time is it? It's 2:43. Oh, man, I've waited around. It's almost, I just woke up hurting all over. And I should have just got up and went to work, you know, on my farm. It's the weekend. And I just sort of like, I waited. My joints ain't hurting as much. I've rested. I've drank. I've ate. I'm starting to feel better. But I really need to get out there before too long. I probably need to go do that before I start researching stuff, or I might just wind up waiting too late. But y'all have a good day. I appreciate every one of y'all. I know I say things that I appreciate people for not reporting my channel, because I know that I don't know. I know eventually my channel will get deleted. Eventually, because I don't shrink away from controversy, and so I cannot be here forever. But I'm enjoying it while it lasts. God bless y'all. Peace out. I got stuff to do. Y'all probably do too.